بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله على ما أولى وأنعم، والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. أصحاب السمو المكرمون، أصحاب السعادة، ضيوفنا الأعزاء، أيها الحفل الكريم، ها نحن نلتقي مجدداً بفضل الله وتوفيقه في المؤتمر الدولي للبحث العلمي والابتكار دعم التحول الاقتصادي والرقمي تحقيقاً لرؤية عمان 2040، والذي نستعرض فيه معكم جوانب من مسارات التحول الاقتصادي والرقمي والخطوات المتواصلة بعزم راسخ إلى فتح أبواب التطور والتقدم والرقي في مختلف المجالات العلمية والمعرفية. يسرنا الآن أن نبدأ معكم فعاليات الجلسة الثالثة بعنوان ديناميكيات التطور التكنولوجي والتحول الرقمي، ويسرنا أن ندعو إلى المنصة المتحدث الرئيس سعادة الدكتور علي الشيذاني، وكيل وزارة النقل والاتصالات وتقنية المعلومات للاتصالات وتقنية المعلومات، لتقديم مشاركته المثرية بعنوان البرنامج الوطني للاقتصاد الرقمي خارطة طريق سلطنة عمان نحو مستقبل رقمي. فليتفضل مشكوراً.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. صبحكم الله بالخير جميعا. اسمحوا لي، أنا أعديت الشرائح باللغة الإنجليزية، فلتسهيل الأمر بشرح باللغة الإنجليزية إن شاء الله. لكن في البداية يعني نتقدم بجامعة سلطان قابوس بجزيل الشكر لدعوتي لإلقاء هذه الكلمة، فشكرا جزيلا للجامعة. Okay, I would like to walk you through Oman's digital economy roadmap and what are the strategic focus of Oman when it comes to growing and accelerating digital economy in the country, inshallah. We are always inspired by the statements and encouragements of His Majesty, who have repeatedly stressed on the importance of digital transformation, artificial intelligence, innovation. And in his recent speech, he clearly stated that the digital economy is going to be a pillar and a main contributor to the national economy. And for us to do that, we have to have the right policy in place, the right strategy in place, the right governance that ensures collaboration between the main stakeholders, namely government, industry, and academia. So we are inspired by His Majesty's statements, direction, and we put them immediately into action. But before going through the actions that were taken by the Ministry of Transport, Communication and Information Technology and the government in general, I want to give you a snapshot of where we are today and where does Oman fare compared to other nations around the world when it comes to digital economy indicators. And I have picked few indicators here just to give you a glimpse of how do we compare with other nations and other countries around the world. So as you can see here, there are different, as you all know, there are different rankings issued and published by various organizations. I picked few here. You can see that Oman, in almost all indicators, whether those indicators are in e-government, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, or ICT development in general, Oman is ranked within the top 50 countries around the world, mainly out of 190 countries. So we are not bad, but growing a digital economy means that we have to do much, much more than this. And if you look at the Vision 2040 document, you will see that the objective is for Oman to be among the top 20 nations in 2030. So we have a road to go, and we have to do a lot. But where we stand today, we are among the top 50 nations in digital economy, in different aspects of the digital economy. Few more statistics here. Maybe noteworthy here is the contribution of the digital economy to the national GDP, which stands at around 2% of the current GDP. This estimation is old. We are now working on an exercise to find out the new number, but we think that this contribution is minimum, and we want to make it bigger, inshallah. Another astonishing fact about Oman is that the appetite for graduate students to study ICT is very high. And we are at an educational institute. It's good to mention that 18% of higher education students are studying information communication technology, which means that there is a good pipeline for talent pool in ICT in general. Oman is also excelling when it comes to connectivity, international connectivity through submarine cables. And you all know that submarine cables is essential for data traffic, and it provides a good competitive advantage for Oman to attract data centers and cloud service providers because of the availability of such submarine cables, which provides extra availability, redundancy, and so on. So that's where we are today. And I'm just giving you a few examples here and there. But where we want to go is much bigger. So the government have launched the National Program for Digital Economy back in 2021. This program focuses on three main pillars: digitizing the government, digitizing businesses, and digitizing society. The program is a roadmap aligned with Vision 2040 and is realized by executive programs in 8 different areas: in digital government, AI, digital infrastructure, cybersecurity development, e-commerce, fintech, space, and government digital transformation. The objective of this program is to grow the digital economy from where it is today at 2% of GDP to reach 10% of GDP by 2040, inshallah. So this is the journey in a snapshot. Today, technology is an enabler, and we all know that. And we want to shift this focus of the government to infuse technology to become an industry, and for Oman to start exporting digital services. And we have phased this in 5-year phases. Every 5 year has a theme and certain objectives. But the ultimate objective here is that we want to grow the digital economy from 2% to 10%, and we want to move the nation from a technology-consuming nation to a technology-producing nation, inshallah. I'm sorry, the slide is a little bit busy, but you can see that for every phase, for every 5 years, there is a specific theme that we want to focus on, but we also look at it from different aspects, from legislative aspects, from infrastructure aspects, from capacity building aspects, and so on, to achieve this objective. So again, the focus areas are upskilling. This is essential. We have to do a lot there. Technology is changing very fast. We have to adapt to the change of technology. The other one is government digital transformation. Again, this is very essential because we want the government to be agile, we want the government to be innovative, and you know, governments play the role of a policymaker and a strategizer. So the more agile you are to the sudden changes of technology, the more benefits we can reap out of these technologies. The other focus area is upscaling Omani startups. One element of growing your digital economy is through startups. And Ministry of Transport, Communication, Information Technology, along with other partners, are working on different initiatives and projects to upscale startups. The other one that has been receiving a lot of attention recently is AI. And the objective here in Oman is to infuse AI to accelerate economic sectors. So we want to diversify the economy, and we want to depend on different sectors to increase the resilience of the country. Those sectors were already defined, namely the tourism sector, food security sector, the logistics sector, and so on. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to infuse and embed AI in these sectors to accelerate their development. So with the usage of AI and with the adoption of AI, we want to accelerate improving and increasing the contribution of these sectors into the national economy. The other way to grow your digital economy is to also become a hub and a magnet for digital companies. That's why we are working closely with the Ministry of Commerce and Investment Promotion to attract foreign direct investments to the country. Adaptive legislations is at the core of what the ministry is doing. The ministry is responsible for laws, is responsible for coming up with the right regulations along with our partners in the government. And you all know that technology is advancing very fast, and for us to be ahead of the curve, our regulations and our laws has to be adaptive to them. So these are the focus areas. In the remaining few minutes, I want to highlight some of the success that we have witnessed in the last 2 to 3 years since we launched the National Digital Economy Program. On government digital transformation, we are very proud to share here that we've had a successful election campaign that was done fully automated from the beginning to the end, all the way from registering voters, registering candidates, media campaigns, voting itself, visualizing the results of the vote. The entire thing was done digitally with no paper. This saved a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it showcased the power of technology to make such a tedious process. It used to be a tedious process for the election. It showcased how this can be accelerated and with minimum effort. And we take pride that we had visitors and media coming from around the world, and one of the media anchors from the Washington Times have suggested this headline, which was very much pleasing for us to read. Attracting foreign direct investment is very important, and we are working with different stakeholders in the government to do that. Oman offers several incentives and benefits to digital companies around the world in tax breaks, in lands, provision of lands, provision of or subsidizing training, subsidizing salaries, and so on. And we use these incentives to try to attract companies to come and work and operate from Oman. And we are happy to report that we've been quite successful in the last 2 years in this area. We've attracted companies in the semiconductor business, we've attracted companies in the cloud-based business, and we've attracted companies in data centers, in data processing, which thanks to these incentives, we were able to position Oman as a hub and magnet for such technology companies. We all know that with the advancement of technology, skilling, reskilling, upskilling is a continuous process. Universities play foundational role in cementing the right knowledge and foundation to students. But when students graduate, they need other channels and other venues to keep their skills and knowledge base up to date. That's why we launched an initiative called Makeen, and the objective of Makeen is to upskill 10,000 Omanis by 2025. This initiative is 2 years old, and I am happy to report that we have achieved half of our objective already. Almost 5,000 jobs. This initiative is focused on job seekers. So almost 5,000 of the job seekers have received training in different aspects. Some of these trainings are physical, some of them are online, in different areas in IT, AI, user experience, product management, front-end development, back-end development, and so on. One of the success programs that we've launched in Makeen are boot camps, coding and AI boot camps. These are 6 months intensive boot camps. Graduates of such boot camps are qualified, and they are in much better position to get jobs in the market. There has been also specific focus on AI, both from the private sector and the government. The private sector have accelerated its adoption of AI. In the last 2 or 3 years, almost 130 million US dollars of investments that has been put into private sector AI projects in the private sector. The ministry have also partnered with universities to establish AI centers of excellences, and also have worked on initiatives to encourage academicians to publish more papers in journals and conferences in AI. The government has also allocated good budget to incentivize government entities to run AI projects. In 2024, this year, the government have allocated about 10 million Omani riyals, around 25 million US dollars for AI projects. Next year, that number is increased to 15 million Omani riyals. So you see there is a lot of momentum, a lot of investments has been put in place for AI in both public and private sector. And we've seen glimpses of results. We are monitoring the number of publications, number of AI publications, and we noticed an increase in the number of AI publications from Oman year after year. Maybe the last topic here is space. Again, part of the National Digital Economy Program is the space program, and we launched our space policy 2 years ago. And since we launched the space policy, we've seen good traction from companies. New companies were formed in space, and international companies have expressed interest to come to Oman and to operate from Oman. Almost 50 million US dollars of investments, private sector investments in space took place in the last 2 to 3 years. And we are also working with an investor to launch the first spaceport in the region. This spaceport is at Duqm, and it's going to be dedicated for space launches, rocket launches. Because of the different competitive advantages that Duqm has, we think that this is going to be a major contributor of the space economy in the country, inshallah. Okay, my time is up. I'm sorry, this is the last slide. So I touched on government digital transformation. I touched on AI. I touched on space. Startups, we're doing so many initiatives, but I just want to highlight these two initiatives that we concluded last week. So hackathons is something that we do continuously, but every time we try to pick new topics when it comes to hackathons. And we're trying to push the startups to work on areas of need in the country rather than moonshot ideas. So in Q4 last year, we did a hackathon on relief technologies. And Oman has been subject to cyclones and weather calamities. So relief technologies that can be used before, during, and after any natural disaster. This was the topic of the hackathon. Last week, we concluded another hackathon on green technologies. Again, looking at environment, sustainability, net zero, and so on. So hackathons where we bring startups, we bring graduates, and we direct them towards areas of need in the country, trying to help attendees to come up with new ideas that can serve Oman first, and then hopefully, if the idea is good enough, can be exported outside Oman. I try to be as brief as I can, and just to give you a glimpse of the National Digital Economy Program, please scan the QR code if you want to know more. Thank you very much. Shukran jazilan.
شكرا سعادة الدكتور علي الشيداني. ندعو البروفيسور أوزابيوس كورم فاكا، المدير وأستاذ سياسة الابتكار كلية المستقبل. مستقبل الابتكار في المجتمع بالولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، جامعة ولاية أريزون، لتقديم مشاركته بعنوان تغيير المناخ وريادة الأعمال الرقمية، تفريغ الصندوق الأسود الرقمي. فليتفضل مشكورا.
I wish I could read that. Okay. Oh. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's really a pleasure. I had, His Excellency, if we had planned, it wouldn't be this good. So shukran, really. So I'll be talking about climate change and digital entrepreneurship. We'll talk how to unpack the black box. So the goal here is really to try to understand how can we leverage value from digital beyond the technology per se. Just a little understanding where I come from. I come from Arizona State, and I'm part of the Julie Angley Global Futures Laboratory. We're the first comprehensive lab really looking to bold ideas how we can create a more prosperous, equitable, and resilient planet. Arizona State is the #1 in innovation in the United States for 9 years in a row. And I have to say that we beat Stanford and MIT. Otherwise, my boss will get the sheep, and the nun will tell you, Seb, you didn't say that. And also, we're the #1 in the United States for global impact, especially into SDGs. Our mission is to shape a future which humanity not only survives, but thrives in a healthy planet. So let's start understanding, when you think about digital, we need to rethink our frameworks. Innovation has been, for a long time, driven by one thing: performance. We have to expand our vision and our understanding of innovation to go beyond performance and be able to understand the difference between output and outcome. Outcomes means that we do gain the performance, but how does that performance gain translate into positive impact in society and the environment? So as we try to develop this future, the future is much more inclusive, much more robust, and much more sustainable. So it's possible to do well and to do good. And I'm inspired by seeing, in the region, all the new startups and the youth and the drive, that you see here. And I think we are able to really change the mindset of those entrepreneurs that we can achieve doing good and doing well at the same time. So why is it important to go beyond performance? Well, if we really want to understand, if we want to achieve, for example, the global development goals, we need to really understand that innovation can play a massive role into creating socioeconomic and environmental outcomes. Innovation has been the driver of many of the issues that we have, but can also be the solution. So let's think a little bit about the black box, which is digital. A lot of times we think about the technology, but let's look inside that. Let's open that black box. So one of the things that we need to understand is that we live in an incredible, unbelievable time in our history, where technology is being unleashed and has been driven by pervasive digital ecosystems. If I look around and I say, how many of you have the device 24/7 near to you? How much the technologies are pervasive? Today, there is a lot of conversations about ChatGPT in education. I wrote a paper, and Yogesh may remember this one, in 2005, which was cell phones in the classroom. If you cannot beat them, join them. Exactly the same problem. The pervasiveness of technology into places. So we need to understand that diffusion of the internet, growth of telecommunications, system miniaturization, conversion, cost effectiveness has changed. If you think about what we had in the 90s in a store, is now in our smartphone. The VCR, the camera, the phone, the computer, the fax, the Walkman. So you have incredible convergence there. What has changed really is our relationship of technology in terms of time, space, interaction, and task support. If I go back in the day and I look at the first stage where things were stationary, only on the red on the top here is where I was able to do tasks with the help of information technology. As we got computers in our homes, as we got internet kiosks, internet cafes, you can see the red area expanding. And then when we become ubiquitous, it's everywhere, with everyone, on every device. So what really has changed is our ability to have the access to the technology in relation to time and space. So a number of different technologies converted and created this ubiquitous digital ecosystem that really help us to support individuals. Like I can send right now good night to my kids back in Arizona. But at the same time, it allows us to enhance the affordances of objects. What that means, it's more and more you see technology embedded into our cups, into IoT, into agriculture, your shoes. So we start to see the technology more and more pervasive, but interconnected. And what it does, it created this state of connectivity that's really blurring how we actually interact and how human activity is being shaped in the 21st century. Now, what we really do here is this connection between the physical world and the digital world, where time, actions, space, and artifacts interconnect. So some of you may remember a song from the 80s from the Police that said, every breath you take, every move you make. Think about this. Think every single one of you had your device on your pocket, and your movement from the hotel or your home to here has been created a digital twin. That creates incredible opportunity for us to understand and to have a relationship that is no longer physical and digital are separate, but they are exactly an overlay of a cyber-physical ecosystem. So what is really looking into this is that technology has evolved into a cyber-physical, which is this mesh between digital and physical elements. It's more and more embedded, it's more and more connected, and it's more and more smart. And that ecosystem, really, as new technologies come, generative AI, quantum computing, and whatever, spatial computing, whatever comes next, is understanding how that adds to this ecosystem. So what you're looking here, the challenge is not only, as His Excellency was talking about the incredible infrastructure, and that's the first part of it. That's the fundamental element that we need. If you don't have an infrastructure, you are not able to build digital value. And on that infrastructure, then you have devices. Devices that are IoT, for objects, but also devices that interact with humans. Like my watch, my phone, my TV, and any others, even my Alexa speaker, are devices that. But what it does, it allows us to have digitalization, which means that form and content are no longer together. For example, when I flew here, my ticket was completely virtual. So all the process of my boarding and so forth became virtualized. The other element is ubiquitous and embedded. It was everywhere into my journey. I had that embedded into my phone. But the most important thing is that now allows what I call generativity, which is the network effect. Because we're connecting things together, we can create new things that were never before. A few months ago, I had the incredible pleasure to teach 25 leaders here in the country on digital transformation, and I did from Arizona. So think about those connectivities. Think about the interaction beyond time and space, how it changes. And what it does, it's about understanding how this technology, how the material artifacts connects to the processes. How are we going to, enhance the process, support a business model, and create digital value? So the goal is digital value, not only the technology. And the ability to put those two together is what makes a difference. So talking about, we can do a lot of things. And here's an opportunity specifically into climate, where in the United States last year, there was $80 billion invested in venture capital. So as you know, there is a lot of different things that will help us to actually create more sustainable economies. And one of them is policies, technological innovation, but entrepreneurial action is fundamental there. And if we want to create, the idea is that those entrepreneurs, and I was so happy to hear you had a hackathon on green, because that's, to me, an incredible business opportunity above all. So there is a big gap. There is a huge gap between sustainability and actually digital. So we need to think about how we can bring those three things together: innovation, sustainability, and entrepreneurship. So here is what you can do. If we have the physical world and the digital world, we're able to observe, understand, act, and transform. The moment that you have your digital twin, we are able to understand, to really observe what's happening in the world. What are the things, what are the actions in the physical world translated to data that allows us to actually create better plans? And then we can start transforming our economy, our environment, and so forth. So that's an incredible opportunity to do this. But there are essential problems here that information technology or digital can actually solve. Knowing, evaluating, understanding, those are all data problems that at the end of the day, you can do two things. You can either understand and engage. Those are two elements that allows us to either reduce emissions or create negative emissions or create more sustainable elements out of that. So at the end of the day, what is interesting is that most of entrepreneurial action a lot of times looks only inside the venture, how technology and business process play together. What we can also look at is how does it actually plays a role into the social technical ecosystem. And I was really pleased to see it say, well, how it helps the country, how it helps the society. But Oman and any other country lives on the same planet. So understanding that relationship between output and outcome is how we go beyond those things. So putting everything together, how do we create ventures in climate? We understand first the climate voids. What is the business opportunity there? To understand, to optimize, and so forth, that allows us to create actually a technology, but at the same time, that technology aligned with a business model. And that, because it's digital, remember the network effect, it can create a value proposition that's highly scalable. And by doing so, it actually facilitates social technological impact, and at the same time, by even changing institutions. You can make better policy decisions. You can make actually better purchase decisions if you actually know what you do. So the interesting thing is that it creates the cycle that the opportunities are driven by understanding what voids exist and then creating the system that interacts within the societal and environmental space. Now let's look at one example, and I will finish on time. Otherwise, I heard I'll get the ship or the Nile. Let's look at Carbon Click. What they're doing, they allow companies around the world, and this is interesting because this one comes from New Zealand. And what is interesting about New Zealand, 4.5 million people, they cannot grow the market beyond the country. So they need to create software as a service with high value, high IP you put into this, where you can scale up digitally. And I can see the same thing for a country like Oman, the ability to scale, even in the region, but in the world, by going digital. So what they do, they allow you to basically, either for yourself or for a business, you go there and you say what type of business you have, how many people, and so forth, and that allows them to estimate the kind of impact that you have. You can then buy packages that, from offsetting to regenerating, you can choose different projects, and so forth. But if you see what they're doing two things. They are understanding by estimating your carbon footprint, and they're engaging by connecting different projects that create that offsetting. That's what they're doing. So at the end of the day, if you think about our model, they understand a void that exists that many companies around the world right now, and there is in the United States, for example, the SEC papers for carbon disclosures. There is a lot of pressure into that. They created a technology, but also they created decarbonization as a service, as a business model. And that allows them from a little tiny island in the middle of the Pacific to actually scale up and create the impact. So at the same time, they're doing well and they're doing good. The interesting thing here, and the biggest challenge that we have, is that we need to have a high level of insight. If our technology, if our models are not good, we're in trouble. Because what you do, you create misguided agency, for example, if you scale that up. So you have to make this combination of the ability to create insight and accuracy by good models, by use of AI, and combine that with level of actionability. That is, how do you reach more people, how do you engage more people into that action? So our goal really is to be on number 4, which is climate champion. Anything that you go on the other ones, if you go to number 2, you can't scale, you're bankrupt. If you go to number 1, you're just Shemix. If you go to number 3, you're basically greenwashing. So the challenge here is to unite those two things. And in my 11 seconds or 10, it's really important for us to understand that there is incredible opportunity, absolutely unbelievable opportunity on this evolving social technical ecosystem where we bring together social elements and technological elements and environmental elements all together to go beyond performance and really thinking how we can drive innovation, how we can drive entrepreneurship to actually produce positive social, economic, and environmental outcomes to our countries and to the world. If we don't develop holistic approaches, and that's one of the things I'm very proud to be in Arizona State at the Global Futures Laboratory, where we drive our research not by discipline, but by problems. Right now I'm working from space exploration to coral reefs to elements of, for example, AI applications into healthcare, because I'm the information technology expert. And that holistic approach allows us to really maximize the impact of technology. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Professor Eusebio. أما الآن فيسرنا الترحيب بالبروفيسور ديفيد برايس بجامعة تشارلز داروين بأستراليا للحديث حول البحث والابتكار وتطور مجتمعات المعرفة والثورة الصناعية الرابعة العالمية الناشئة، ما هي انعكاساتها على المجتمع؟ فليتفضل مشكوراً.
Your Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow presenter colleagues. We are now going to have a fairly major change in direction. We've had 2 days of presentations by experts in technology and the future and innovation. Now we're going to change. We're at a crossroads and I'm taking a direction somewhere else. We're now going to talk about simple things. We're going to talk about society and the impact of the simple individual. And what I want to reflect on is what is IP, what is society, how is that impacted by AI? Should we be worried? What is AI? Where does it leave us? So as I said, very simple. And my slides, I might say, are going to reflect that as well. But before I do, I want to just pick on 2 aspects of the Vision 2040 which really struck me. And I must say, this was a document that was easy to read and absorb and reflect upon. So I do congratulate you and compliment you on this particular document. The first point I want to point out to you is that your document talks about empowering a knowledge-based society. Not an ordinary society, but a knowledge-based society that is impacted upon and benefits from the creation of new knowledges, intellectual property. And that's something that your particular vision picks up. Now, all the GCC member states have produced their own plans, some which will come to fruition in 2030, such as Saudi Arabia, others in 2031, 2035, and yours. But yours is actually the only document that specifically refers to knowledge-based society and what that means. And that's why that really struck a chord with me. The other point I want to make in your document is you put up front that although there are great possibilities and great potential for society, there are challenges, and those challenges have to be addressed, and we are, in essence, at a crossroads. And if we don't address those challenges, we're going to have problems, we're going to have issues. And again, I compliment you for putting that right up front in your document. So we have this challenge. Society as we know it, and which we accept it, and we're reasonably comfortable in it, and the promises, many of which we don't understand, or particularly my generation don't understand, about these new emerging and frontier technologies and the innovation that's going to come upon us. So how is that going to affect our society? How will it change it? How might the membership even change it, depending on some of the advances we hear about in the media and the press and so forth? Who might decide who's going to change our society? Will we, the ordinary little person like me, be able to have some say in it? They're important issues. And see what I mean about the technology? I can't even control this. So many of the terms in the new emerging technologies and what you've heard in the last day and a half, I don't understand, I must freely admit. The experts do, but I don't. What does that mean for our role in the future and what's going to happen and what we're going to accept and what we're not going to accept? And when I talk about acceptance, I don't just mean social, I just don't mean the individual, I also mean legal and political and structural, and infrastructural. Do we, for example, need to change what we mean by a person? Now, in a legal sense, in treaties and main documents, there are 2 types of persons, the natural person and the corporation. But even a corporation needs to have some natural person there somewhere, whether it's the board or whether it's the CEO or so forth. Are we going to change that? Are we going to have to come up with new terms? And you can apply that, extrapolate that right across the whole board. And I just wanted to have you a quick look at in relation to copyright or intellectual property rights. So now I use the Australian copyright law, but all laws relating to copyright in countries that are members of the World Intellectual Property Organisation, 190 something, all those who are members of the World Trade Organisation, 160 plus, have to have their domestic laws relating on intellectual property comply with the international standard, which is the WTO's agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights. So you'll see similar wording in what you set up in the Sage will elsewhere. And it mentions person, a qualified person, right? It doesn't mention artificial intelligence created IP. It talks about a person, or it talks about a citizen who's a person. And you'll find that existing elsewhere in other forms of intellectual property and copyright. But I just want to show you something from the United States, which is the world's greatest producer and exporter of intellectual property, on what they say. And the Copyright Office makes it very clear. As far as they're concerned, the contemporary position is that copyright can only be produced by a person. It states specifically, the only material that is a product of human creativity is produced by a person. The term author is even enshrined in the Constitution to mean person. And the United States judicial situation is much the same. They say that while copyright is designed to adapt with the times, which could be an indication that we're going to have AI being introduced and being involved, even with that, it has to be human creativity. That's the be-all and end-all. Without that, you really don't have creativity. So the position really, let me talk about patents. In patents, it's the same thing. Internationally, globally, legislation talks about the person. Even the legal representative is a person. Now, globally, the situation judicially is that courts have said, no, we will not accept a patent from someone or something which is not a person. There's actually been only one example that differs from that I can find. And that is in relation to Stephen Thaley's device for creating inventions called Qboos. Now, I mention this because Qboos has been in the courts in the United States, in Australia, in Europe. And universally, the courts have said, no, we don't accept inventions by artificial intelligence. It has to be a person. There's only been one exception to that, and that was in Australia, where the court at first instance said, yes, it's a logical extension. Legislation is meant to have logical extensions. If a person invents something that's a replacement for a person, it should be able to invent and have a patent as well. However, when that went on appeal, the full court said, no, got to be a person. Thaler decided to go to the High Court of Australia, the highest body, and said, hey, can we have this? And the court said, no. We're not even going to hear your case. We're not going to give you special leave to appeal. The legislation and the wording is quite clear. It has to be person. So I thought, with what we know about AI and what's happening, should we be glad or should we be sad? So I went to Forbes Publishing. Now, Forbes is a global media organisation that gives expert advice across a broad spectrum in relation to business, the economy, and also intellectual property. So I thought, what do they say? And they basically said, look, this is great. This is really what's coming on. It's really great. It's going to improve mankind's right. It's going to remove human error and mistakes. It can only be good for mankind. And AI's got the potential to be even better than us, which means life's going to be better for us. And they list a whole lot of things that are beneficial to us. And there's a list of what they produced. Reduces human error, does difficult jobs, makes quick decisions, gives us more free time, gets involved in really difficult areas for a human being, like for their medical applications, surgery, judicial decision making, and so forth. So we've got to feel pretty happy about that, don't we? But there's another side, and there's those who think, oh dear, we are in real trouble because we don't understand it and everything's moving too fast. And I cite the example of Geoffrey Hinton, who used to work for Google until he retired, who basically said, whoa, wait a minute, if we're not careful, there we go, the secret of immortality, but it's not with us, it's with robots. It's the end of humanity, but robots will continue. And that sort of thinking has been continued in some areas by other eminent experts in the field. But there are also those who are advocates of the new advances in technologies who say they're great, they're terrific, great possibility for us, but we have to be careful and we have to take note and take command, otherwise it'll be at our own peril. So I then went to think, well, let me ask myself, what is AI? What is it? Let me think. So I went to ChatGPT and said, can you give me some help? Give me a few examples of the movement of AI. What is it? And it's difficult. Came up with 4 main areas of AI, then 7, then 10. And when we went on to Google and Googled it, all these various definitions and terms and differences, 4 advances in AI, 4 different types, 7 different types, 10 different types, 12 different types. I was utterly confused. But I did eventually come up with what I saw as 3 basic types we got so far. Generally established AI, what's on our phone and so forth, what we live with every day and we hardly notice it, what we're using. Then there's generative AI, where we put ChatGPT and those other helpful guides who look for stuff on the instructions we give them. Then there's artificial general intelligence, which is going beyond us, but by gee, it's pretty strong and can make videos and other stuff for it. Great. So that, in some respects, in very simple terms, is where we are now. But there's also research going on taking us further, and this is where it becomes interesting. Artificial superintelligence. And this is what Hinton was concerned about, that this is going to take over from us. It can perform better than us. It might supersede us and make us obsolete. And here's a really fascinating one. Organoid intelligence. Now, this is basically global research, but it's centred on Johns Hopkins University in the States, where it's going to use human brain cells combined with the power of a computer. Can you imagine that in a physical form? Brain cells linked to the computer, because the brain has certain unique capacities to store information and make calculations, which can be matched with the other capacities of computer. Could you imagine walking around with your little mini computer in your arm with electrodes going into your brain? That's an oversimplification. And I thought, gee, wow, that's a bit worrying, isn't it, in some respects? So I asked my colleagues of my generation, which is generated existed well before computers and even mobile phones came into existence, how do they perceive or see society and AI in society? And they came up with the following. First of all, there's a conceptual phase. Look at that. We don't understand what that is, or I don't, but we've got all this circuitry going on, doing computations behind the scenes, transferring knowledge. And I think that's an indication of painting on the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican, of transferring knowledge. We have a human development, if you like, in some respects, still doing those calculations and work that we don't quite understand. With a board behind them of all those mathematical figures, we have no idea what that means. I don't know. But that's the conceptual phase. We don't quite understand it, but we're led to believe it happens. And you may get a bit of the old stuff as well. But there's another face that my generation recognises, the threatening face of it. You know Arnie Schwarzenegger from the Terminator series. A killer robot. Robot armies. Okay, that's theoretical. But in real life, we have drones, killer drones, information gathering drones, and killer vehicles, guided missiles with precise accuracy that exist already. There's a third phase, and that third phase is basically the human form of AI. And here's Amika, reputed by some to be the world's most advanced robot, who's now living in Heriot-Watt University in Scotland. But you'll recognise, I'm sure, my next guest, Sophia the robot, created by, I forgot the name of the firm, created by a firm in Hong Kong, who was recently given citizenship by Saudi Arabia in 2017, created in 2016, given citizenship by Saudi Arabia in October 2017 at an international conference to attract foreign investment and funding. And also the announcement of Saudi Arabia's longitudinal city, which was going to be run and managed by robotics and AI. Now, Sophia created a storm of debate in the media and the press about AI taking a human form and almost then becoming integrated into society. and the debate has continued to rage. Sophia has even become, goodness me, look at the time, a UN ambassador. And these are some of the issues that have been raised in discussion about should we recognise robots. But it goes further. And one which I'll particularly point out to you, what do we do, for example, if a robot commits a criminal offence or commits some other civil service action which is indictable, in which that robot could be prosecuted and found guilty? How do you punish a robot? Do you put them in the corner and take away the key? No, you can't do that because they've got pseudo-societal privileges and rights. And that's the sort of debate that's been going for some time. I'm going to go through this quickly. I've got to talk about Klaus Schwab, who talks about the fourth industrial revolution and what's going to happen in society. Now, he reckons it's a great idea. He sees great potential and advantage for the global society, but he also sees some issues. And two main issues, and they're human-based. The first is leadership, both domestically and globally, in embracing and being prepared to embrace and take action on this new technology. The second problem, and I just got the wind-up signal, is the society itself, who don't understand and therefore might react and reject, but they might also do it violently. And basically they're saying politicians are governed by their electorates or by their parties or by the people, not necessarily by business and by the future. Judicial authorities are governed by conservative approaches. They can't make the laws, they can't change the laws, they administer them. I haven't got time for the cake, but that might come later. So what next? And I'll particularly talk about in here supporting infrastructures. All right, politicians and leaders have to know what's ahead of them. They have to be educated themselves. They need infrastructure. And I want to mention that because I'm pleased to see that the GCC member states and Oman are already doing this in the way they're approaching the future and the way they're incorporating future potential, but also future challenges and issues into their ministries, into their organisations. For example, you have your follow-up committee here in Oman. I'm going to go through to the end, if it lets me. And internationally, it's going to require a whole new range of perhaps international organisations and treaties with a willingness by states, countries, to be committed to the outcomes of those new international infrastructures. I just wanted to leave you this little thought as a close. Sometimes it's the little simplest thing that makes a difference. As the policeman pulls over the driver, does your car know why my car pulled you over? To which the driver replies, I'd ask her if I knew how. On that point, ladies and gentlemen, I apologise for going over time, but thank you particularly for the invitation to come to Oman, to Muscat, again, and give this presentation.
Thank you, Professor David. ندعو الآن الأستاذ الدكتور عامر بن سيف الهنائي نائب الرئيس للدراسات العليا والبحث العلمي إلى المنصة لتكريم المتحدثين ومدير الجلسة، فليتفضل مشكورا. سعادة الدكتور علي الشيداني. البروفيسور أوزيبيوس كورم فاكا. البروفيسور ديفيد برايس. الأستاذ الدكتور أحمد مراد. ويسرنا الآن أيضاً الترحيب بمدير الجلسة النقاشية الأستاذ الدكتور أحمد مراد، النائب المشارك للبحث العلمي بجامعة الإمارات العربية المتحدة للالتحاق بالمنصة والبدء في الجلسة. شكراً الأستاذ الدكتور عامر بن سيف الهناي. كما يسعدنا الترحيب مجدداً بسعادة الدكتور علي الشيداني، البروفيسور أوزابيوس كورن، البروفيسور ديفيد برايس، فليتفضلوا لبدء الجلسة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We'll start our panel discussion. So as the time is a little bit tight, we'll start the question. I'll start with His Excellency Dr. Ali al-Shaydani. And I will start by referring to the statement of His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. Digital economy is bivital and central pillar of digital economy in Iman. In order to achieve this statement, you need to have a good partnership between academy and industry, especially in the technology and innovation. So how do you vision the relationship between academia, universities, colleges, research center, and industry, especially in industry and innovation?
Indeed, the transformation to transform the nation from a traditional natural resource dependent economy to a diverse economy based on technology and innovation is a journey. And that journey has many facets, many layers in this journey. You have to tackle different layers. The laws and regulations layer, the capacity building and talent layer, the infrastructure layer, and the stakeholder engagement layer. Because an economy, by definition, is not one-sided, it's multi-sided. Therefore, this triple helix is very important. Industry, academia, and government. Government sets policies, they set the direction, they provide incentives, they orchestrate, they facilitate, and they enable the environment. Universities or academia in general, they are the producers of knowledge. They are the producers of manpower that can create the new knowledge, that can create new products. Those products are being commercialized, exported, turned into value, turned into money in the industry. And this industry can take different shapes and forms. It could be a startup, or it could be a multinational organization. So this synergy between government, industry, and academia is pivotal. It is very difficult for government to set a direction and for academia to focus on a completely different direction and industry to have a different focus. Such setup will not lead us to the position that we want. Therefore, this synergy is important. So whose task is this? Is it the task of academia, or is it the task of industry? Who should reach out? Who should be the first, to extend their arm to the other? This is a debatable issue. Academia sometimes feel that the industry has to come and present their challenges and issues for academia to solve. The industry sometimes feels that academia is shying away. They are not upfront. They don't promote for the knowledge that they have. They don't promote for the potential innovation that they can come up with. But government, because of the nature of their role as an orchestrator and as a facilitator, I think government should take a more, more concrete steps. I don't want to say a leading role, but more concrete steps to bridge this gap between industry and academia. So let me now give some examples of what we're trying to do at the Ministry of Transport, Communication, Information Technology. We realize this very well. Therefore, we know that the ministry is not academia, so we don't do research. Whenever there is a need for centers of excellences, for research, things that are very, academia focused, we work with universities and we give them the space and, if required, funding with the Ministry of Higher Education, Innovation and Technology to do it. We are also very careful that we are not a corporate. We are not in the business of producing products, but we avail the opportunities, we avail the challenges, we avail the incentives to companies to do so, to startups to do so. We give them the business case to work on it. So there are several initiatives that we are working on, either with universities bilaterally or with industry. And with the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation, together, there are programs where we try to achieve this triple helix through technology transfer offices at universities and through other platforms. And what really, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I think these three entities need a platform to celebrate achievements, a platform to exchange and to network. This is a good platform, such a conference, and we are building in Oman technology platforms to exchange such knowledge, to exchange such experience, and also to celebrate success. But going back to your question, it is pivotal and essential to grow the digital economy. It is essential for the triple helix to work perfectly.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Maybe follow-up question. Since the inauguration of the National Digital Economy Program at Oman, how do you assess the collaboration between academic institutions in Oman and private sector?
Okay, so let me say that we are now 2 years since we started the program. I would say that these 2 years have been more on awareness and understanding of what is this. Maybe previously the dots were not linked. Industry was, on their own space. Academia also was their own space. Government was also isolated when it comes to technology and digital transformation. Now we are trying to bring the dots together. We are trying to bring everyone together. So the last 2 years were more or less awareness, getting to know what is this, validating whether this is for real or not. And this is what is happening. When we go and speak to universities, when we go and speak to industry, they look at us and they are a bit skeptical. Is this for real? Are you really serious about this? So I think the last 2 years were more about building confidence, building connection, and awareness. But we had several initiatives. But most of the initiatives were on training, upskilling, and few initiatives on research and innovation.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. We'll move now to Professor Eusebio Scorn. So climate change is considered as one of the important issues now globally. Can you please elaborate a little bit in how can the policy support overall the technological innovation that related to the climate change? In addition to that, can you shed light a little bit about the contribution of global future laboratory and the theater at Arizona State University as example how support the government to achieve the mitigation of climate change?
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. So the first thing when we look about is we need to understand climate change as what we prefer to call adaptation and resilience, right? Living in the middle of the desert in Phoenix, we realize that we're very susceptible for that. So how can we drive technology for us to have better human and environmental outcomes, right? So Arizona State, I'm very proud to say, we are a university that on the last 20 years came from a research expenditure to about of $20-30 million a year to last year reaching close to $1 billion a year. So we have $1 billion a year just in research. And the state funds only 10% of it. What we have is 7 technological centers that actually we have large companies, small companies, Intel. The state of Arizona, if you look at 20 years ago, was still relying on exports and mining. Today we have a $40 billion US investment into microchips, for example, driving technological exchange. So the first thing I think is important is the university. We believe that we are responsible for the success of the communities we serve. So the idea is that universities should bring together, and I'm director of a science and technology center on sustainability innovation that right now we're co-funding. So we bring some funding, we're a matchmaker. And industry, depending on the size of it, matches the award. So for example, if you're a large company of Intel, we fund only 20%. If you are a small startup, we fund 80% of the project that we're doing together. So there is ways to create, and I really agree, it's about creating a partnership. It's about creating elements that you have this balance of contributions. But at the end of the day, what's the point of us as university if we have graduates that the moment they graduate, they get a diploma and a plane ticket to go work somewhere else? So you have to have this understanding that the responsibility of the university, in partnership with government, in partnership with the private sector, is to create an ecosystem where we help to create the resources, the knowledge. That knowledge is transferred, create economic wealth to the region, create jobs to the region, right? And by creating this partnership, specifically into climate, the way we look is that it's not only good business, but it's also important business. There is an incredible opportunity here to drive innovation that brings value. When you look into policies, you'll see in the United States, will probably the economy of the carbon economy, so-called, will be driven by shareholders. Right now, there is $1 trillion US ready to be spent on green investments. I'm happy to take it, right? So in Europe, you see a different type of regulation coming straight from Strasbourg, that they will require companies to, disclosure and so forth. So those things, who's going to build the technology to be able to do that? So there is an incredible business opportunity because at the end of the day, societies and shareholders are valuing that. So it's not only the idea that you're doing this because it's the right thing to do, but it's the good thing to do for the, prosperity of the communities that we serve. So having this mindset, and that's why I'm really proud to have joined Arizona State, that we believe that the goal, our function, is to take ownership and responsibility for the future and the I would say, prosperity and of the communities that we are embedded.
Thank you. Maybe a follow-up, but I need a short answer. Do you think that Gulf State and the region have good ecosystem to use advanced technology for the climate change actions?
What region in Arizona?
Gulf state. And,
The Gulf state.
Yes.
I think that one of the things I love about the Gulf states is the ability to drive innovation, the hunger for innovation. Your youth is really willing to learn, right? It's much easier for me to teach a class here than in the United States. The students are, so I think that there is elements that I believe that if you start looking into frameworks of innovation, especially responsible innovation, the idea that you're producing performance gains, but also positive outcomes from that. I think here you have an incredible opportunity to actually drive and be a place where you can export knowledge and so forth and attract, human capital and so forth. So I do believe that, this region, and especially because you're susceptible to climate adaptation, you're also in the desert. It's a harsh environment, which I think creates an incredible opportunity. And with the right mindset, the right collaboration, I think we can achieve that.
Thank you. We'll move to Professor David Price. David Price. As you know, IP and inventions are considered important for the academic institution, and researcher here and students are worried about the development or using artificial intelligence. Do you think that's now the time for the government and the policy makers to think differently in implementing or in using the laws and regulation to support protecting the intellectual property of the ideas for the researcher and the student? How, in general, how can or do we need to change the policy in general and the legislation, policy and the laws in order to protect the intellectual property, especially with rapid change in technology?
In a nutshell, we need to change, or at least we need to modify. Now let me refer to example for that fundamental international benchmark for copyright and for patents. Now that's been constructed on international agreements from the late 19th century, 1883 and 1886. The World Intellectual Property Organization had its original foundation in 1887. It's since been changed to a UN specialised agency in 1967. But we're talking about that sort of creation, and the thought processes were there in the late 19th century, and think of what has been created since then, still emerge and still come. And that's why I think the change is needed. It's either change or modification or something additional legislation to provide for, allow and encourage the new frontier technologies, the emerging technologies that people have been talking about for the last 2 days. There's no point us, civilization, modern society, knowledge society, trying to stop it. The floodgates are open. It's going to happen whether we like it. We can't stop it, but we should be able to manage it and make sure that the benefits come to society. If we don't allow the benefits to come, other things will happen. The dark side, the downside. Industry will still develop because there's a market. There's a big market for weapons. And if new technology firms are not developing for, say, governments and society, they'll develop for whoever will buy their product. So change, acceptance is important. Not only in IP, but generally. Remember all that list of questions that were asked by society in relation to Sophia the robot? About should they have an age, should they be able to vote, should they get national health? All the things listed on that group are defined, allowed, prohibited or permitted by current legislation and statute across countries. It's all there in a legal sense. But we found with that example that they are inadequate and they need to be updated. Now, it may be updated to say, no, we don't want robots being part of society. Right, if that decision has been come by considered debate and consultation, and a decision has been made, no, we know why it's been made, and we have good reason for it. And that could be a basis for change in the future if it's necessary. But to do nothing, in my view, is going to lead to things at our peril, as Klaus Schwab pointed out. Now, he's a great proponent of the fourth industrial revolution, these changes. He said they're great. It can solve a lot of mankind's problems, including climate change. But he said, we've got to be managing it. We've got to be part of it. We've got to know what's going on. We've got to contribute it. We've got to help. So I think without change, we're going to have problems. There's no point putting our head in the sand and hoping it'll go away, because it won't.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move now to His Excellency Dr. Ali. In your capacity as Under Secretary for Communication and Information Technology, what are the biggest challenges driving these changes, and how are they being addressed by the government in Oman?
Oh, this is a very difficult question. I think we are in the middle of a digital revolution that is unpredictable. And that unpredictability is the biggest challenge. I remember the AI community used to think 4 years ago, 3 years ago, they used to think that AI will only replace routine jobs, for example. When ChatGPT became available to everyone, and everyone have seen the capabilities of generative AI, that entire notion that AI will only replace routine jobs changed immediately. And now, and the same people who used to say, well, if you are creative, if you are innovative, if you are not doing routine job, you are okay, you are saved. ChatGPT just, killed that idea altogether. And now poets, artists are all, fearing what generative AI can do. So the unpredictability, let me go back, unpredictability of technology maybe is the biggest challenge. The other one is, from history, technological advancements, they go through hype cycles. Some technologies stay longer, some fade away very quickly. It's difficult to tell which one will fade away and which one will stay, because your capability of spotting which one will fade and which one will stay determines your investment. If you say that this or that technology will stay, this means that you will put some investments in infrastructure, in capacity building, and so on. But if that technology doesn't pick up, then that investment, well, investment is risky all the time, but that is, it's a tough call. So again, because of the rapid change of technology and different interpretation of and understanding of technology, and the fuzziness between whether this technology is a real game changer or is just a marketing or a gimmick, maybe that's another challenge. I have more and more challenges, but maybe I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ali. Now we'll move to Professor Eusebio. You presented in your presentation the framework to move from the digital world to the physical world. How can this framework help and support entrepreneurs in addressing issues related to the climate change and the balance between the sustainable practice and commercial feasibility?
So let me see if I understood the answer correctly, the question correctly.
Yes.
So you're asking the relationship of digital and physical?
Yep.
And what is the second part?
how you balance between the sustainable practice
Okay.
and commercial feasibility.
Terrific. Wonderful. I think the first element, and I'll build on your previous answer, is to understand that as any pervasive technology, what it will do, it will change the portfolio of tasks that humans do. If I go here and I ask how many of you know to light fire without a match or without, probably the boys there on the military will know, right? And most of us will not, because we had a number of technologies that became pervasive. So when we start to understand digital and physical, what we start to really, the key element here is to understand pervasiveness, is to understand that more and more the two environments that for a long time seen separately are being together. Now, the part which is understanding is that we need to use what we call risk innovation, which we understand how to balance the benefits versus the risks that you take. Let me give an example in AI, and I can give in sustainability. If we, for example, deploy a face recognition, there is immense benefit that you can come with that. But there is risk. Who has this data? How that data can be used? So understanding that we don't only look at the performance, but we look at also the potential unintended consequences of innovation. And that's, to me, what I'm really happy to be working on, this cutting-edge thinking of innovation that balances the benefits versus the risks. So when we're looking into business, you can look at the Gartner, you're talking about the hype cycle, but you can look at, on the most recent 3 years, their survey of businesses and leaders asking what are the biggest risks that you see. And what they are also seeing is societal elements and environmental elements. So if we can drive technology to mitigate that risk and make that balance between purpose-driven businesses and actually the bottom line, I think you can create businesses that actually produce more value to society and the environment, which then there is a payback there. So changing that only seeking for performance can be very dangerous because you're not doing this balance between the benefits versus the unintended consequences or risks. So creating or innovating with this sort of framework, I think you can have a much more long-term and more prosperous outcomes of your investments, including from the government.
Thank you. Professor David, actions that taken by the lawyer sometimes taking more time than the scientist. And especially now with the advancement of the technology and with artificial intelligence, how can we bridge the gap between the lawyer action in terms of the time and the advancement of technology and using artificial intelligence?
Well, a very good question. In some respects, it's a difficult one to resolve, but I can answer it. The lawyer is still acting on the basis of the best interest for his client, and he's committed to do that, but within the constraints of the law or statute as it's stated, but also as how it's been interpreted by the courts in the past. Now, the courts are conservative. They rely on past determination. They rely on past determination on a particular clause in the statute and the law. How can it be improved? Gets back to government. By government saying, we have this new technologies emerging, we are getting feedback from industry, by that I mean the legal industry, just saying we're too complicated. We've got too old stuff going in there. We need to change. We need to look at what's no longer useful. Just give you an example of that. Australia's patent law makes direct reference to the Statute of Monopolies. Now, the Statute of Monopolies was passed in England in 1623. And here we are, in 2024, we still have a 1623 law in our books. Get rid of it. And the same with problems that are emerging, say, through the legal profession on the issues they have with business and the development of business and what's holding it back. The responsibility on government is to look at both the legislation and the regulation that comes out of that, the paperwork. Business often complains it's so damn difficult to put in a form for something simple. It needs 3 or 4 copies. The form's 10 pages long. Why? The form is quite often repeating information that's already lodged for somewhere else in that ministry, or perhaps someone else with an associated ministry. Now that's where government can do a bit by reviewing, in light of where we're going in the future, say how can we improve, how can we work in partnership with industry and society so that both can benefit by cutting out some of that old stuff, or that stuff that's non-goal relevant, or stuff that can be improved. And it's part of that change that really needs to occur. And there's plenty of scope for that. Complicated societies find a great problem doing it. Well, they'll lapse, they'll go behind. But new emerging global societies, and I'll put the GCC within this region, have a great opportunity to take a greater role and to be a global leading force. Other emerging economies, such as the South American countries, India, a new economy that's going to really emerge in the next 10 to 20 years is Indonesia. It's going to really go up the scale because they are going through a process of review and change. How can we improve things for our people? How can we improve things for our business? How can we attract foreign investment funding? And they are on a process of change. And that's what is needed.
Thank you, Professor David. So now we'll give time to the audience and the student to ask questions to the panelists. We'll have few questions. We'll start with you, Doctor. Please introduce yourself. And yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Saeed Al-Rawahi. I'm from Oman College of Health Sciences. My specialty is behavioral change in psychotherapy.
Can you increase your...
My voice?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the fruitful and wonderful presentation for all of you. I've really enjoyed the sessions. I have questions for His Excellency Dr. Ali and Professor Aizubayo. I hope I pronounce your name nicely. And please forgive me if not. So Dr. Ali, you have mentioned about AI a lot in your presentation. What about blockchain? There's nothing, government will focus on blockchain. Okay, this is question number one. Question number two, I have heard in several presentations online through YouTube, okay, that the currency of Oman will be converted to digital currency. How far Oman will go with that plan? So this is 2 questions for you. The questions for the Professor Aizubayo. Based on your experience in the field of digital and technology, do you think AI recently will progress to have sense of feeling and emotion? Currently, as far as I understand and know with my narrow knowledge, that AI has the capability of replacing cognitive thinking of a human. But do you think, what about emotion as well? Thank you so much.
Your Excellency, Dr. Ali Shidani.
Shukran jazilan. So if I understand the question, the first one was on blockchain. What about blockchain? So blockchain is a technology just like any other technology. The most important thing here is not the technology itself. Is this technology going to solve an issue or not? That's the most important thing here. We have different challenges in different sectors. The philosophy is what are the challenges and how can we solve them? If the solution is going to be done through AI or blockchain or any other technology, so be it. It's fine. Blockchain, you know, is a popular technology. It has its own success in specific areas. And that's where whenever the challenges from that specific area, obviously blockchain is going to be used. But again, as ministry, we are not advocating for one technology or the other, but we use any technology available to solve the challenges. On the other question of Oman digital currency, I can't say much about it because I'm not sure whether it is still an ongoing project or not with the Central Bank of Oman. The Central Bank of Oman is the entity responsible for anything to do with currencies and any derivative projects related to currencies. So I don't have much knowledge about it. I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Do you need to add anything, Professor Yusuf?
Thank you so much for your question. And I'll tell you this, if this conference was being held 4 years ago, it was on blockchain. 7 years ago was big data, right? 10 years ago was in mobile. 15 years ago was on Web 2.0. 20 years ago was on web. So you can, the important thing is to stop looking at the shiny box of the month and actually look at what is the affordances. What is the technology providing and how disruptive the technology is. The moment that you create that mindset, whatever technology comes next, you are able to adapt. So going to your question about AI, the challenge here is for us to understand that there is a paradox of automation and augmentation. And we need to understand that in some elements, for example, I truly believe that my kids, I have a 15-year-old daughter and an 11-year-old son, they will probably be the last generation to know how to drive a car. You go to the United States, and most people don't know how to drive a manual car because the technology became so pervasive that everybody learned on automatic. I learned outside of the US, so therefore I can drive a manual, not a problem. So when you're talking about emotions and other elements like this, you have to think that there is a goal in many times of what we call anthropomorphic nature of technology. If you look, for example, into chatbots, if you look into AI, people try to imitate humans, even the robots that Dave was talking. I lived in Japan for a couple of years, and you see a lot of times the robots tend to have this anthropomorphic nature, which means they try to humanize. But there's also research of some called Uncanny Valley that shows that the moment the technology becomes too human, instead of attracting, it creates repulse to us because we don't know anymore what's what, and that's not good for human beings. So the element is, again, is going to using frameworks of innovation that balances the risk versus the benefit. And for example, having technologies that can deceive us, whether it's a human or not, is this beneficial? I mean, when you look at Alexa or Siri, there is a slightly robotic tone to it, and that's done on purpose. Because then you're interacting with that, but we still treat as human. How many times you talk to Alexa or to Siri and you said thank you? You did that? I do that all the time. It's like, you know, Alexa, what's the weather today? Today in Phoenix will be very, very, very hot. And they go, thank you. Because I forget about that it's a machine. But even though if it becomes deceiving, that's actually for humans, the way we psychologically react is negative, right? So again, it's about striking that balancing of providing benefits, but at the same time, understanding that there are potential unintended consequences, and that decision is done by society. And locally, that's another important element. So what society here in Oman and as the ministry can decide that those are things that we value, those are things that align with our values, that's something you want to have. Not necessarily what's good in Phoenix, Arizona, is good in Muscat. And that's why, you know, technology needs to adapt to those local values. So emotions and other, you know, anthropomorphic or human-centric levels is a desire, of course, because it becomes more natural, the interaction, but if it becomes too natural, it starts to get risky.
Thank you, Professor. Any other questions, please?
Thank you for this presentation. My question is for His Highness Dr. Ali Shaydani. My question is about the project Makin, in which you are presenting micro-credential programs. The first question, are the programs accredited from the Oman Authority for Academic Accreditation? And the second question, do you have any intention in the future, or why, in fact, you didn't think of it before, to have like a collaboration between you and the universities in which they prepare the courses and will be accredited. I think in this way we can يعني, benefit each other, the old governments, to have our own courses which are accredited. Thank you.
Yes, Your Excellency, please. Okay. You have the floor.
شكرا شكرا جزاك الله خير. So the question is with reference to the upskilling program that the ministry is implementing, and one of the programs is to provide job seekers with micro-credential degrees. So not a normal degree, it's a micro-credential, it's called a nano degree. That is provided by Udacity. Udacity is one of the micro-credential providers. And the degrees are 3 months degree. It's an online course, but project-based. And usually the instructors are from the industry. They are from the top leading companies like LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. So her question is, if I understand the question, your question is why don't these micro-credentials be credited at the university? So if you take them, it's an equivalent of a subject in the university, right? Well, that's not our call. So we are providing this option to whoever wants to gain new knowledge. If you want to gain new knowledge, new skills, then this is an option that is available to mostly graduates, not students. This was designed for graduates. The nature of these micro-credential degrees is that they are very focused and very cutting edge. So for example, you get a micro-credential degree in language processing, for example, or in advanced neural networks. So they are very niche and cutting edge technology. So the short answer is we would love for universities to accredit these degrees if it fits the bylaws of the universities. But we are providing this as an extra resource to graduates to gain more knowledge, to know what's happening in the industry, and hopefully to give them better job opportunities in the future.
Thank you.
Let me add something that's what we're doing in Arizona, and I think it's very exciting. So we have at the university today 180,000 students. But think about this, 180,000. 90,000 online, 90,000 on campus. But we make a difference at the university. We have two types of students, let's call that. The ones that we call students are the ones enrolled on regular degrees. And the ones we call learners are those taking short courses. So we have actually, the way the university is structured, we have something called the academic enterprise. That's what we do with our degrees. But we have something called the learning enterprise. And the learning enterprise starts from kindergarten all the way to retirement. We actually built a retirement home where people that are above 60 years old come and live inside the university and can attend courses. It's sold out in 48 hours. Wow. Do you want to move in, Dave? Right? So the idea of lifelong learning is actually an element the university is doing. So going back to your question about micro-credentials, the way that we're looking is that there are different responsibilities that we can take by transferring knowledge and empowering our communities, right? Whether it's around the world. We also have a partnership with Sultan Education where I created a course on what is innovation, short course, 90 minutes, 11,000 learners around the world right now. So the idea is that how we do is that once you complete those micro-credentials, it can create pathways towards degrees, whether it's undergrad degrees or master degrees and so forth. But making that differentiation between student, which is traditional, and learner, which is people who come in and out of our system from the moment they are in kindergarten to the moment that they are in retirement. And that's the way that we're doing, and I think is incredible because allows people to consume and to develop themselves in knowledge at, from basically from the age of 5 to the age, of 90 or more. I think the oldest student in Arizona State, or the learner, is about 90 years old.
Thank you, Professor. I think by this we conclude this panel. On behalf of organizing committee, I would like to thank His Excellency Dr. Ali Shaydani, Under Secretary for the Communication and Information Technology at the Ministry of Transportation and Communication and Information Technology, Professor Eusebio from the Arizona State University, and Dr. David Price from Charles Darwin University in Australia. And thank you all for your listening and attendance.
شكرا لكم جميعا. أيها الحفل الكريم، نترككم الآن في استراحة قصيرة، وسنواصل بعدها فعاليات المؤتمر الدولي للبحث العلمي والابتكار دعم التحول الاقتصادي والرقمي تحقيقاً لرؤية عمان 2040. كما سنعود للجلسة الثانية في الساعة 11:15، ونود التنويه أيضاً على أهمية تسجيل الحضور لتتمكنوا من الحصول على شهادات حضور المؤتمر. شكراً جزيلاً لكم.